In the second video, we looked at how you could build 12-column layouts with Flexbox. But the best part about Flexbox is you're not limited to 12 columns. So in this video, we're going to look at how you can create other types of layouts with Flexbox that aren't constrained by 12 columns. So the first layout we're going to be looking at is this calendar that you see here. And you notice, like most calendars, it's broken up into 7 columns. If you try to build this layout with a 12-column grid system, no matter what you do, it's always going to end up off-centered. With Flexbox, this layout is a piece of cake. So the first thing we're going to do is add the markup. And like before, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. So as you can see here, there's nothing too crazy going on. I have a div with the class of month representing the calendar as a whole, divs with the class of week for each week, and finally a div with the class of day for each day. And you'll notice that the first 3 days here in the calendar don't have numbers. So the next step is to make the week a flex container and to set the flex grow and shrink of each day to 1. So this works, but wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to include those empty days? Well, with Flexbox, that's easy. So the first thing we'll do is remove those empty days from the calendar. Next, for the first day, we'll set the left margin to 3/7 of 100%, and we'll set the right margin to 1/7 of 100%. And that's it. A full calendar done completely in Flexbox. Sometimes you'd like to build layouts that aren't divisible by whole numbers. A good example of this is layouts based on the golden ratio. The golden ratio is a popular constant that's found in art, mathematics, and nature. In a golden ratio layout, the proportions of 2 columns are 1.618 to 1. Let's take a look at building a golden ratio layout with Flexbox. We'll start by adding a simple section with 2 columns. Here, I've used a class of phi column to denote the column that will set to the golden ratio. I've set the flex grow and flex shrink of 5 column to the golden ratio. In case you're not familiar, the Greek letter phi is usually used to denote the golden ratio. Because Flexbox allows flex containers to be nested, it's easy to add additional containers for rows as well. All we've done here is apply the same flex grow, shrink, and basis properties to the rows as well as the columns. We've also made the rows and columns flex containers themselves so they can be nested. If we continue the pattern of nesting rows and columns, we'll end up with a golden rectangle. Finally, if we overlay this with a golden spiral, we'll really see the golden ratio in action. So let's say you'd like to build a short bio layout for yourself. You'd like for your picture to be on the left side and for some text describing you to be on the right. So for this layout, let's start with the markup. So like before, there's nothing too fancy going on here. We have a section, we have a figure that contains an image, and we have a paragraph for the text. Let's go ahead and make the section a flex container. So you can see that we're already pretty close to the behavior that we want. And that's because the default value for flex grow is 1. However, the default value for flex shrink is 0, and the default value for flex basis is auto. Let's go ahead and set the flex property of the paragraph to be more specific. While we're at it, we'll also add a little margin to the left. Remember the flex basis property from before? It determines how much space a flex item takes up before the remaining space is distributed using flex grow and flex shrink. Since we want our image to be a fixed size, let's go ahead and set it to a pixel value. The cool thing about this approach is the flex container doesn't really care how big or small the image is. So what would happen if we changed the size of the flex container? As you can see, that first figure resizes itself accordingly. Finally, in this case, since the image is fixed, we could just use auto. And that's it. The last layout we'll be looking at in this video is a vertical layout. In the past, it's been very difficult to do vertical layouts in CSS, but like most of the other stuff we've covered, Flexbox makes it really easy. So let's say you wanted to build a full page layout with a fixed header and footer and content in the middle. You can set flex direction to column and then apply the same trick you used in the bio layout to keep the header and footer a fixed size. So there's nothing too fancy here. We're using main for the container and a header, section, and footer element for the 3 parts. So the first step is to set the HTML and body element's height to 100%. Then we'll make the main element a flex container, set its flex direction to column, and also set its height to 100%. So as you can see, it doesn't look any different. The next step is to set the flex basis for the header and footer to a fixed value. Finally, we'll set the flex grow and the flex shrink of the section to 1 to make it fill up the rest of the space. So what happens if the content in the section is larger than the space on the screen? So right now, as you can see, it continues to overflow straight out of the container. We can fix this by making that section scroll. And now, the inside of that container perfectly scrolls up and down. So that's it for this video. We've covered quite a few ways that you can use Flexbox outside of 12-column layouts. The next time you need to build a tricky layout, think back to this video and check to see if it can be done with Flexbox. Chances are good it probably can.